They say blood is thicker than water, but no one tells you what happens when your own blood decides to bleed you dry. I'm sitting in my new apartment now. My apartment, watching the snow fall outside my window. The radiator hums a song I've never heard before, because for 26 years, I never lived anywhere that was truly mine. The irony isn't lost on me that it took losing everything to finally have something. My name is Sarah, and I have muscular dystrophy. My muscles have been betraying me since I was 12. But that's not the betrayal that nearly destroyed me. The real betrayal came from the people who were supposed to love me most. Let me start at the beginning, or at least the beginning that matters. I was 24 when I first noticed the numbers didn't add up. Not the medical numbers. Those had been declining steadily for years, as expected. My mobility was getting worse, my independence shrinking like a sweater in hot water. But the financial numbers, those were the ones that made my stomach drop. I was sitting at the kitchen table in my parents' house, the house where I'd lived my entire adult life because, well, where else was I supposed to go? Mom was making her famous tuna casserole, the smell of cream of mushroom soup filling the air with its artificial comfort. Dad was watching hockey, shouting at the TV like the players could hear him through the screen. "Mom," I said, my voice barely cutting through the sizzle of onions in the pan. "I need to see my bank statements." She paused, just for a second. But in that pause, I felt something shift, like the moment before an earthquake when the birds stop singing. "Why would you need those, honey?" Her voice was honey too, thick and sweet and just a little too much. "You know we take care of all that boring stuff for you." That's when I knew. Not the details, not the scope, but I knew something was wrong. Because I wasn't asking for them to take care of my finances. I was asking to see them. Because they're mine, I said. The onions kept sizzling. Dad kept yelling at the TV. But the air in that kitchen had changed forever. Therefore, I started paying attention to things I'd been trained not to notice. How my parents never seemed to struggle financially despite Dad's sporadic construction work. How Mom always had her nails done, her hair freshly colored. How they'd bought a new truck last year, but told me my wheelchair repair would have to wait because money was tight. But I was still their daughter. I still loved them. I still believed that surely there was an explanation, some mistake I was making in my fog of medications and medical appointments. Therefore, I said nothing for months. I watched and waited and hoped I was wrong. I wasn't wrong. The discovery came on a Tuesday. Tuesdays were always hard for me. Physical therapy in the morning, occupational therapy in the afternoon, and by evening, I was usually too exhausted to do anything but lie in bed and listen to podcasts. But that Tuesday, I couldn't sleep. My back was screaming, and I'd run out of the muscle relaxers that usually knocked me out. I wheeled myself to the kitchen for water and saw Dad's laptop open on the counter. He'd been doing our taxes, he'd said earlier, taking care of the boring adult stuff, so I didn't have to worry about it. The screen was still glowing, and there, in black and white pixels, was my name on a credit card application I'd never seen before. My hands shook as I scrolled. Credit card after credit card, loans, a line of credit, all in my name. All with addresses I'd never lived at, phone numbers that weren't mine, signatures that weren't mine but were close enough to pass. The amounts made me dizzy. 50,000, 80,000, numbers that felt abstract until I realized they were supposed to be mine. My disability payments, my government support, my lifeline, all of it flowing into accounts I'd never seen. I took pictures with my phone, my hands trembling so badly I had to brace my arms against the wheelchair's sides. Click, click, click. Each photo was evidence, but also felt like a nail in a coffin I didn't want to build. But even with proof in my hands, I still couldn't believe it. Not completely, because believing it meant accepting that the people who'd changed my diapers and fed me pureed food when I couldn't swallow had been stealing from me for years. It meant accepting that every time they'd said, "We're doing this for you, honey," they'd been lying. Therefore, I dug deeper. I called the disability office the next day while my parents were out. The woman on the phone was kind but confused when I asked about my payment history. "Your payments have been going to the same account for 8 years," she said. "Is there a problem with direct deposit?" "What account?" I asked, though I already knew the answer would break something inside me. She gave me the account number. It wasn't mine. And the address on file? Not mine either. Some apartment across town I'd never seen. "Ma'am, are you saying someone has been fraudulently receiving your benefits?" The word hit me like a physical blow. Fraudulently. Such a clean, official word for something so dirty. "Yes," I whispered. "I think so." But knowing and proving are different things, and confronting your parents about financial fraud isn't exactly covered in family therapy handbooks. Therefore, I spent the next 3 weeks gathering evidence. I became a detective in my own life, which is surreal when you can barely lift your arms above your head some days. I called banks, pretending to be verifying information. I printed emails. I screenshotted the documents. I built a case against the people who'd built my whole world. The hardest part wasn't the investigation. It was the acting. Sitting at dinner, making small talk about the weather, while knowing that the people across from me had been stealing my future bit by bit. Watching Mom fuss over my medications while knowing she'd been forging my name on documents. Letting Dad help me into bed while knowing he'd been signing loans in my name. The confrontation happened on a Thursday. I remember because Jeopardy was on, and the irony of a game show about questions and answers playing in the background wasn't lost on me. "We need to talk," I said during a commercial break. Something in my voice made them both look up. Maybe it was the fact that I'd never said "we need to talk" before. In our family, things happened to me, not because of me. I rolled my wheelchair directly in front of the TV and put the folder of evidence in my lap. "I know what you've been doing," I said. The silence stretched until the commercial ended, and Alex Trebek's voice filled the room with a question about 18th century literature. The answer, coincidentally, was about betrayal. "Honey," Mom started. "Don't." The word came out sharper than I'd ever spoken to either of them. "Just don't." I opened the folder and started reading. Account numbers, dates, amounts, a litany of theft dressed up as caregiving. Dad turned off the TV. "You don't understand," he said finally. "We were keeping it safe for you. We were managing it." "By spending it?" "We have expenses," Mom said, and her voice had changed. The honey was gone, replaced by something harder. "Do you know how much it costs to take care of you? The ramps, the modifications, the special equipment? But here's the thing about being disabled in a world that sees you as a burden. You start to believe you are one. You start to think that existing costs so much that you owe everyone around you for the privilege of being alive. Therefore, for just a moment, I wavered. Maybe they were right. Maybe I didn't understand the cost of my own existence. Then I remembered the wheelchair repair I'd been waiting 8 months for. The physical therapy appointments they'd canceled because of transportation issues. The times I'd skipped meals because we were watching expenses. That money was supposed to be for my care, I said. My future, my independence. What independence? The words came out of Dad's mouth like a slap. "Sarah, be realistic. You're never going to be independent. You're never going to live on your own or have a job or get out." They stared at me. "Get out of this room. Now. This is our house. Get out!" I'd never yelled before. Not like that. Not with everything I had left. My voice cracked and my throat burned. But something in the sound of it made them move. When they were gone, I sat in that room alone and cried. Not the pretty crying you see in movies, but the ugly, choking kind that comes from somewhere deep in your chest. I cried for the money, yes, but mostly I cried for the daughter who'd believed her parents loved her more than they loved what she could provide. But crying doesn't pay lawyers, and I needed a lawyer. Therefore, I started making calls. The first 6 lawyers I contacted either didn't handle disability fraud or didn't think I had a case. The 7th, a woman named Jennifer Chen, listened to my whole story without interrupting. "How much?" she asked when I finished. "How much what? How much did they steal?" I did the math in my head, numbers I'd been avoiding for weeks. "Around $300,000. Over 8 years." The silence on her end lasted so long I thought the call had dropped. "Sarah," she said finally, "that's not just theft. That's organized fraud, identity theft, tax evasion. We're not talking about small claims courts here, but taking your parents to court feels impossible until it becomes the only possible thing. Therefore, I moved out. Not to my own place, not yet, but to a group home across town. The social worker who helped me relocate was a middle-aged woman named Pat, who didn't ask too many questions about why I needed emergency housing. "Family situation?" she asked, while packing my clothes into garbage bags. Something like that. The group home smelled like disinfectant and sadness, but it was the first place I'd lived where my mail came to me instead of being handled by someone else. Small victory, but victory nonetheless. The legal process took 14 months. 14 months of depositions and document reviews and meetings with investigators who treated my case like a particularly interesting puzzle. My parents hired their own lawyer, who tried to paint me as an ungrateful daughter, taking advantage of their generosity. But fraud leaves paper trails, and my parents have been careless. Bank records don't lie. Signatures can be analyzed. Digital footprints can be traced. Therefore, when we finally went to court, the evidence was overwhelming. I'll never forget rolling into that courtroom. The judge was an older woman with silver hair and kind eyes, who looked at me directly when she spoke. Not at my wheelchair, not at my lawyer, but at me. "Ms. Patterson," she said, "I want you to know that what happened to you was not only illegal, but unconscionable. The people who were supposed to protect you instead exploited your vulnerability for their own gain." My parents sat 3 rows behind me. I could feel them there, but I didn't turn around. I'd stopped looking back. The judge awarded me the full amount plus damages, $375,000. But more than that, she ordered them to pay for my housing, my care, my independence. "This court recognizes," she said, "that Ms. Patterson is entitled not just to compensation, but to the opportunity to live the life that was stolen from her. But winning in court and winning in life are different battles. Therefore, I had to learn how to be alone. Not lonely, alone. There's a difference. Lonely is empty. Alone is space to fill with your own choices." I found this apartment 6 months after the trial ended. It's on the 2nd floor of an old building that's been retrofitted with ramps and wide doorways. My bedroom window faces east, so I wake up with sun on my face. The kitchen is small but organized exactly how I want it. The bathroom has a roll-in shower that's mine, where I can take as long as I need without someone knocking on the door. I hired my own care team. People who work for me, not around me. The difference is bigger than you'd think. Some days are hard. The muscular dystrophy doesn't care that I won my independence. It keeps doing what it was always going to do. My muscles are weaker now than they were 2 years ago. I need help with more things than I used to. But there's something powerful about choosing your help instead of having it chosen for you. There's dignity in paying someone to assist you instead of being told you should be grateful for whatever assistance you receive. Therefore, I'm learning what I actually like. Turns out I hate tuna casserole. I prefer my coffee black, not with the cream and sugar my mother always added. I like silence in the morning instead of the TV news blaring. I like my apartment cold instead of the sweltering heat my parents kept the house at. Small things. But small things add up to a life. My parents tried to contact me after the trial. Cards on my birthday, voicemails on holidays, letters that started with, "We hope you'll forgive us," and ended with, "We only wanted what was best for you." I don't respond. Not because I'm angry, though I was for a long time, but because I'm finally living forward instead of backward. But sometimes, late at night when the building is quiet and my muscles are aching, I think about forgiveness. Not the kind they want, where everything goes back to how it was, but the kind that lets me stop carrying their choices around like stones in my chest. Therefore, I'm learning that forgiveness isn't about them. It's about me choosing not to let their betrayal define my future. I volunteer now at a disability rights organization. I help other people navigate the systems that were used against me. I tell them what I learned, that love shouldn't come with hidden costs, that family shouldn't feel like a prison, that asking for what's yours isn't ungrateful. It's necessary. Last week, a young man in a wheelchair came to our office. His brother had been managing his finances, and things weren't adding up. He looked scared and guilty and confused. All the things I'd felt 2 years ago. I don't want to believe he'd steal from me, he said. I know, I told him, but believing the truth is the first step to changing it. But the best part of my new life isn't the apartment or the independence, or even the justice. It's the quiet moments when I remember that I fought for myself, when everyone told me I was being ungrateful, or unrealistic, or too demanding. I kept fighting. Therefore, I know something now that I didn't know before. I am stronger than the people who tried to break me. Not physically. I'll never be physically strong, but in every way that actually matters. The snow is still falling outside my window. Soon I'll need to call my care worker to help me get ready for bed. My muscles are tired, and my back is stiff, and tomorrow will bring its own challenges. But tonight, in this apartment that's mine, looking out this window at a view I chose, I know something my parents never wanted me to know. They say blood is thicker than water, but I've learned that respect is thicker than blood. And sometimes, the family you build is stronger than the one you're born into. Sometimes, the best thing you can do for the people who raised you is show them exactly how strong you became despite them. I am not a burden. I am not a source of income. I am not someone else's version of grateful. I am Sarah Patterson, and I am exactly where I'm supposed to be. The snow has stopped falling now. The silence feels complete. Tomorrow I'll wake up in my own bed, make my own coffee, decide how to spend another day that belongs entirely to me. They say blood is thicker than water, but I've learned that freedom is thicker than both. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to be small in a world that insists you should be grateful for scraps. I roll closer to the window. Watch the streetlights paint golden circles on fresh snow. Somewhere across town, my parents are probably watching the late news, wondering if I ever think about them. I do, but not in the way they'd want. I think about them the way you think about whether you survived, with gratitude for your own strength, and a quiet promise to never be caught unprepared again. The building settles around me. Small creaks, soft sighs. My muscles ache the way they always do at the end of the day, but the ache feels different now. It feels like mine, and that makes all the difference in the world.